I'm Claudette with They Call Me Martha, and I'm back with part 2 in my card series where I show you simple techniques to help you take your die cuts to the next level. To make this card, I'm using a couple different die sets from Spellbinders. First, I'm using the Sealed Blooms, and then I'm also using the Essential Arches. Then I pulled out an embossing folder. This one is from Simon Says Stamp, and it's called Blossom Field, but I think you can use any floral embossing folder and it would look really nice with this particular die set. Then I've pulled a couple pieces of cardstock. I created a top folding card base. This is an A2 size, and then I've cut 2 panels to 4 by 5 1/4. We're going to start working with these 2 panels and then also doing some die cutting, and then we'll assemble this easy card. So I have my 2 panels that I cut down to, again, this is 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to line them up and then just apply a little piece of low tack adhesive to keep them from shifting around. And then I'm going to use my arch die. This is the die that's about 3 1/4 by 4 1/2, I believe. And I'm just going to make sure that I center it and then tape it down as well. I'm going to run this through my die cut machine. It should cut both layers at once. If it doesn't, it should leave an impression on the second piece of cardstock, and you can line up your die in that impression and run it through as a single sheet. The idea here is that you want to make sure that the panels line up to one another. If you cut them separately, there's a chance that they would not line up on the edges. So that's why I do them at the same time. Let me run this through my die cut machine and I'll be right back. All right, I've run that through my die cut machine and it did cut both of them really nicely. If your second sheet did not cut, all you have to do is line your die back up and run it through one more time. Okay, so we have our 2 arch fronts, and then you only need one of the inside pieces of the arch. So I'm going to set one of the arches aside, and the inside piece, I'm just going to work with one, and I want to run this through my embossing folder. And before I do that, I'm going to just run a baby wipe over the surface. It just gives it just enough moisture, and it really helps make sure you get a nice impression on your embossing folder. So let me go ahead and run this through my die cut machine and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I have my embossed arch. I'm going to bring back in my plain arch and then my inside piece. I'm going to add some Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide Ink to the inside part of my arch. What I'm looking for here is not complete coverage, but just like a hint of sky in the background. So this part does not need to be perfect. Okay, and the next thing I want to do is I want to glue my embossed arch to my plain arch. So I'm just going to use a little bit of wet glue here. Don't need a lot, just enough that we can get these edges to line up nicely. So I'm just going to move it around again until all my edges are nice and even. All right, now I'm going to bring back in my card base. I'm going to make sure that my fold is along the top. And here I'm just going to dry fit my embossed panel on the front of my card base so that I have an even border all the way around. I'm just going to temporarily tape that down. And what I want to do is place my arched center right inside just like that. All right, I'm just going to add a little bit of glue to the back and then adhere this down into the middle. Okay, then I can remove my arch. I want to add some dimension to my arch, so I'm going to pop this up with foam tape. So on the back, I'm just going to line up my tape along the edges. Now, I am not a fan of like jagged foam showing from the sides. So I try to take my time in lining up all of my edges all the way around. I do like to line them up so that you have a nice clean look from the side. All right, and one more piece to fill in the bottom. Okay, I'm going to set this aside while we work on our flowers. Off camera, I went ahead and die cut my flowers for the front of the card, and I'm going to end up using 3 of them, so I'll have a couple of extra, and then also 2 sets of the flowers. Okay, to color these, I'm going to use Copic markers. I find it easier to color them if you leave them inside the negative space rather than punch them out and try to color them. So I'm just going to go through and color all of my stems. And I'm using a combination of YG63 and YG67. I'm just adding a little bit of the darker green here and there. It's such a small leaf that you really don't have to be super precise about it. I'm just adding it for a little bit of dimension. And then I'm going to smooth the whole thing out with the lighter color one more time. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the flowers, and here I'm using just a couple shades of like a corally pink. I have R20 and R43. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start by coloring in my lightest color as a base, and then just adding a little bit of that darker color to the edges just to give it a little bit of dimension. What I love about Spellbinders dies is they really do the work for you. They've added in all of this detail in the die itself, so you don't have to spend a whole lot of time coloring and making it perfect. Okay, I think we're good to go. We can start assembling. So I'm going to bring my card base back in. I want to start by arranging my flowers in my little arch shape here before I glue them down, just to make sure I like the arrangement. Okay, and I'm not going to glue down the lower part of each of the stems so that we can trim them off at the end. I'm going to start by gluing my tallest in. So here I'm just going to add a little bit of glue to my acrylic block so that I can tap my die cut into it. It makes it so much easier than trying to hold on to it. Okay, and I'm just going to put my straight one here right in the middle. And then once I determine kind of about where I want the stems to end, then I can trim that last piece off. Okay, now I'm gonna continue with the other stems. All right, now I'm going to add a little bit of dimension by putting some foam behind my flowers to pop them up on top of each one. All right, I've added some foam tape to each of the back of my flowers, and now I can add these to the top of the ones that are on the vine. I would recommend putting just a little bit of wet glue on top of your foam just to make sure that it sticks on top of the ink that you used for your coloring. And then my last one. All right, so now I have all that really nice dimension. I'll let those set up a little bit. Then off camera, I stamped and embossed a sentiment strip. I love the contrast of using black and white with just about any card design. It works beautifully. And here I've used Thinking of You, and then I've cut 4 strips of additional cardstock to fit it so that I can get some added dimension. You can also use foam here if you prefer. So I'm just going to glue these all together, stack them up. And then just take a moment and make sure that all of my edges are lining up. And then give it a good press. And then I can glue this across where my vines all meet, right about like that. Okay, and then I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the back of my sentiment strip and glue it across my flowers. Just going to take a moment, make sure that it's straight. Okay, and then I've brought my frame back in, our embossed frame with our foam tape on the back. Remove the liner from each of the strips. When I'm working with foam, I do like to add a little bit of wet glue to the top, and that's just so that I have a moment to shift it around in case it's not quite lined up, especially if you have foam tape that's super sticky. This is a really good way to give you a little bit of room. And so now I'm just going to line it up around my dome center. And then give it a good press. And then to finish off this card, I'm going to bring in my favorite stickles, which is in the color Stardust. Just going to add a little bit of that sparkle to each of our flowers. You can add it to the leaves too if you like. And then I'm going to also bring in some pearls, just for some added dimension, I think, on a few of them. Let's see. So I'm just going to add just a tiny bit of glue in the center of each, and then add my little gem inside each center. All right, now I'm going to set this aside, let it completely dry, make sure those stickles are completely dry, and any glue that is white currently will also fade away and go to a clear. And so here you can see on the edges, because we took the time to make sure that we didn't have any jagged foam, that you get a really nice clean edge. I love how this Spellbinders die comes together. It's so quick and easy, and I can see how many different ways I could possibly use it. And then I also love the addition of the embossed panel on the top. I'm always looking for ways to use my embossing folders, and this is just a really nice way to get some added texture. That's it for our card design today. I hope that you enjoyed putting together this quick card. If you are inspired by my content, please do take the time to give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel so that you can see more content like this in the future. Be sure to check out part 1 of this video series, where I'll show you how to make the other card shown in this photo.